I still refuse to answer my phone if it rings at exactly 2:17 a.m. I don't care who's calling. My wife knows it. My parents know it. The county sheriff knows it. Because the last time I answered a call at 2:17, I heard my own voice begging me not to drive down Blackwood Road. The problem was, I was already driving there. Officially, the road has another name, County Route 19. It's a quiet stretch of Tulane asphalt that cuts through dense forest just outside Yosemite National Park. Tourists use it to reach campgrounds. Locals use it as a shortcut into town. Delivery trucks pass through it every morning. Nothing about it looks unusual. No abandoned buildings. No strange symbols. No warning signs. Just endless trees, cracked pavement, and miles of darkness after sunset. But if you ask anyone who's worked emergency dispatch long enough, they'll tell you the same thing. Every 911 call that comes from that road ends the same way. Not because of bad reception. Not because the callers hang up. Because something else answers first. My name is Daniel Hayes, and before becoming a park ranger, I worked as a volunteer search and rescue EMT for Mariposa County. Our station handled everything from hiking injuries and car crashes to missing campers. We worked closely with the Sheriff's Department and the Regional 911 Dispatch Center. Most nights were predictable. A stranded hiker, a twisted ankle, a drunk tourist who underestimated Yosemite's cliffs. The job was stressful, but it made sense. Until October 14th. That was the first night I heard the recording. I wasn't supposed to hear it. Dispatch recordings are protected evidence, especially when a death is involved. But after 12 hours on shift, rules get bent. Dispatcher Megan Collins had dark circles under her eyes and a half-finished cup of cold coffee sitting beside her keyboard when she waved me over. "You ever hear the Blackwood call?" I shook my head. "No." She hesitated, then quietly locked the dispatch room door. "You didn't hear this from me." She clicked through several archive files. The timestamp read, 2:17 and 3 seconds a.m. The recording began with heavy breathing. A man was clearly driving. Turn signal clicking. Engine humming. Wind against the windows. Then his voice. "Hello. 911. The dispatcher answered immediately. "County Emergency Services. What's your emergency?" The man sounded terrified. There's someone standing in the middle of the road." A pause. Almost hit him. The dispatcher asked, "Can you describe the individual?" Another pause. Then the driver whispered, He looks like me." Megan stopped the recording. I laughed nervously. "That's it." She didn't smile. "Keep listening." She pressed play again. The dispatcher calmly said, "Sir, remain inside your vehicle." The driver wasn't listening anymore. His breathing had become faster. "Oh God, no," the dispatcher repeated. "Sir," then something happened. A second voice came over the line, not through static, perfectly clear. It sounded exactly like the driver. Same voice, same breathing, same accent. It calmly said, "Don't stop." The real driver screamed. "Who's that?" The dispatcher immediately replied, "Sir, I only hear you." The second voice laughed softly. Then it said, "If you stop, you'll answer the next call." The recording ended with tires screeching, metal twisting, glass exploding, silence. Megan turned off the speakers. "They found the car?" She nodded. "Wrapped around an oak tree." "What about the body?" She stared at me. "There wasn't one." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "There was blood. There was damage. There was no driver. The seatbelt had been fastened. The driver's door remained locked from the inside. No footprints. No drag marks. Nothing. Just an empty vehicle." I tried to convince myself it was an urban legend. Maybe someone disappeared after the crash. Maybe the recording had been edited. Maybe dispatchers liked frightening rookies. Then Megan quietly opened another file. Different year. Different caller. Different vehicle. Same road. Same timestamp. 2:17 a.m. The recording began. Female voice this time. Crying. "I think someone's following me." Dispatcher. "Where are you now?" "Blackwood Road." Megan glanced at me. I felt my stomach tighten. The dispatcher continued asking questions. Then the woman suddenly stopped speaking. The dispatcher called her name 3 times. No answer. Instead, another woman answered. Same voice. Perfectly identical. "I'm almost there." The dispatcher frowned. "Ma'am," the second voice calmly replied. "No, you aren't talking to her anymore." The call ended. Another empty car. Another missing driver. No body. No explanation. I looked at Megan. "How many?" She leaned back in her chair. "Officially, 3. She looked toward the evidence locker across the room. "Actually, 27. Every single one had occurred on Blackwood Road. Every single one happened at exactly 2:17 a.m. Every caller vanished without leaving a body, and every recording contained the same impossible detail." A second version of the victim eventually joined the call. Before I could ask another question, the station alarm sounded. Emergency dispatch. Vehicle rollover. Possible injuries. Location: Blackwood Road. Time: 2:14 a.m. Megan's face lost all color. "No." She looked at the clock. 3 minutes. Only 3 minutes remained before 2:17. The radio crackled. Any available units respond immediately. My partner, Rick Lawson, grabbed the truck keys. "We're closest." Megan ran into the garage. She grabbed my arm before I climbed into the ambulance. Her grip hurt. "Whatever happens." She looked me dead in the eyes. "If dispatch calls you at 2:17, don't answer." I almost asked why. Then I noticed something. Every veteran deputy in the station had stopped moving. None of them were preparing equipment. None of them were speaking. They were all silently watching us leave. Like they already knew we weren't coming back. Rick drove. I monitored the radio. Neither of us spoke for the first few miles. Rain had started falling just hard enough to smear the windshield, and the wipers struggled to keep up. The forest on both sides of Blackwood Road looked darker than it should have. Not because of the weather, because the headlights seemed to disappear into it instead of lighting it. I finally broke the silence. "You've worked this road before?" Rick didn't answer immediately. Then he nodded once. "Twice." "What happened?" "The first time, he kept his eyes on the pavement. We found a car. The second time, we didn't." "What do you mean you didn't?" "The dispatcher kept updating the GPS. We followed it for 40 minutes. It stayed exactly half a mile ahead of us." I laughed nervously. "So the signal was wrong?" Rick shook his head. "No, it wanted us to follow." Before I could ask what he meant, the radio crackled. "Unit 12, respond." Rick grabbed the microphone. "Unit 12. Static." Then dispatch. "What's your location?" Rick glanced at the dashboard GPS. "About 2 miles from the scene." Silence. Then Megan answered. "No, you're already there." Rick looked at me, then at the windshield. The GPS showed we were still moving. 45 miles per hour. But outside, the mile marker beside the road read, "Blackwood Road, mile 13. We drove another 30 seconds. Another mile marker appeared. "Blackwood Road, mile 13. Again, same number, same dent in the metal, same faded bullet hole near the bottom. Rick slowed the truck. We passed this 3 times. The radio crackled again. "Unit 12. Rick answered. "I'm here." Dispatch hesitated. "Who answered first?" Rick frowned. "What?" Static swallowed the transmission. Then another voice came through. Rick's voice. Perfectly clear. "I'm already here." Every hair on my arms stood up. Rick dropped the microphone. I didn't say that. The radio answered him anyway. "You will." Silence. Neither of us touched the radio again. At exactly 2:17 a.m., both our phones rang. At the same time. Mine displayed, "Unknown caller." Rick's displayed, "Daniel Hayes." My own name. Rick slowly turned his screen toward me. "My phone thinks you're calling." I looked at mine. It read, "Rick Lawson." Neither of us had touched our phones. They kept ringing. Neither of us answered. After about 15 seconds, both phones stopped. Then my voicemail notification appeared. I hadn't answered, but somehow, I had a new voicemail. My hand shook as I pressed play. At first, there was only heavy breathing. Then, my own voice. "If you're hearing this, turn around. Don't keep driving." I didn't listen. "You still can." I froze. Every word sounded exactly like me. Not similar. Exactly me. Then I heard something else. An engine. Rain. The click of my truck's turn signal. The voicemail had been recorded. Inside the vehicle I was currently sitting in. Rick whispered. What did it say? I lied. Wrong number. He didn't believe me. I could tell. But before either of us spoke again, we saw the headlights. A pickup truck sat sideways across the road. Engine running. Driver's door open. Hazard lights flashing. Exactly where dispatch had reported. Finally, something real. We pulled over. Emergency lights illuminated the crash scene. The truck had struck nothing. No trees. No guardrail. It simply sat in the middle of the road as if someone had parked it and walked away. Rick checked the cab. Empty. The engine was still warm. Keys still in the ignition. Coffee still steaming in the cup holder. Whoever had been driving couldn't have left more than a minute earlier. Yet there were no footprints leading away from the truck. The mud surrounding it was untouched, except for one set of footprints leading toward the forest. Only one person, walking into the trees, never coming back. Rick looked at me. Stay here. I'll check the trail. I grabbed his arm. No. He frowned. What? We stay together. For a second, he looked irritated. Then he slowly nodded. Good. I was hoping you'd say that. That sentence made me pause. Something about the way he said it felt off. Too calm. Almost rehearsed. We followed the footprints about 50 yards into the forest. Then they stopped. Exactly stopped. Not faded. Not covered by leaves. The final footprint ended beside a massive pine tree. Beyond it, nothing. No return tracks. No struggle. No blood. Just empty forest. Rick stared at the ground. I hate this road. Then, someone laughed. Quietly. Right behind us. We spun around. Nobody. Only trees. Then the laughter came again. Ahead this time. A flashlight appeared between the trunks. Someone wearing search and rescue gear stepped into view. He waved. Hey. Rick immediately called back. We're over here. The man smiled, then stopped walking. Something felt wrong. His flashlight wasn't moving with his arm. His smile never changed. And although he stood only about 40 yards away, I couldn't make out his face. It looked blurred, like I was trying to remember someone I'd forgotten. Rick took a step toward him. I grabbed his vest. Wait. What? I pointed. Look at his boots. Rick looked down. The man wasn't standing on the ground. He hovered about 3 inches above it, perfectly still, without leaving footprints. Rick's face drained of color. Slowly, the figure raised one hand, then beckoned us closer. Not aggressively, almost politely, as if inviting old friends. Then the radio on Rick's shoulder suddenly came alive. Static, then Megan's voice. Unit 12. If you can see someone in search and rescue gear. Her voice broke. Don't let them get closer. The figure smiled even wider. And for the first time, I realized why I couldn't recognize his face. It wasn't blurred anymore. It was changing. Every few seconds. Different man. Different woman. Different age. Different face. As though dozens of missing people were trying to become one person. Then, the face finally stopped changing. It became mine. My own face smiled back at me from 40 yards away. Not just similar. Perfect. Same scar under my chin from a mountain biking accident in high school. Same crooked nose. Same ranger beard. Even the same tear in the left sleeve of my jacket. Rick slowly whispered, Dan. I couldn't answer. The thing wearing my face tilted its head exactly the way I do whenever I'm confused. Then it laughed. It was my laugh. Not louder. Not distorted. Exactly the sound I'd heard from myself my entire life. That frightened me more than anything else. Back up, I whispered. Rick didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on the figure. It raised one hand, slowly, calmly, then pointed behind us. I made the mistake of looking. The ambulance was gone. The road was gone. The trees behind us had disappeared. Only darkness remained, an endless wall of black, as if the forest itself had been erased. I spun back toward the figure. It hadn't moved. Now it stood barely 20 feet away. Neither of us had seen it walk. Rick pulled his sidearm. Stop, the figure obeyed. It stopped instantly, still smiling. Rick's hand shook. Identify yourself. The thing answered immediately. Daniel Hayes. My partner is Rick Lawson. Our station is Mariposa County Search and Rescue. It was reciting my personnel file, word for word. Then it looked directly at Rick. You have a daughter, Emma. She's 6. Rick's face went white. We never discussed family on duty. Not over the radio. Not anywhere near dispatch. The thing smiled wider. She'll answer the phone tonight. Rick fired. The shot echoed through the forest. The bullet should have hit center mass. Instead, it passed straight through. Not like a ghost. Like the space where the thing stood simply wasn't there. The bullet struck a tree behind it. The figure looked down at the hole in its chest. Curious. Then the wound slowly closed. Like water settling after someone dropped a stone into it. The radio exploded with static. Then dispatch screamed. Not Megan. Someone else. Run. Another voice interrupted. Calm. Cold. Too late. The two voices began talking over each other until they became impossible to separate. Then every radio channel went silent. Even the emergency weather frequency. There wasn't a single signal left. The figure finally spoke again. Do you know why every call ends the same way? Neither of us answered. Because nobody is calling for help. They're answering. My stomach tightened. What does that mean? It took one slow step closer. Every missing person was sent to replace someone. The ground beneath us vibrated. Not an earthquake. Footsteps. Heavy ones. Somewhere deeper in the forest. Whatever was making them was enormous. Branches cracked. Trees shuddered. The smiling version of me looked toward the sound. For the first time, it looked afraid. They're early. Rick grabbed my arm. We're leaving. We turned to run. The road had returned. The ambulance sat exactly where we'd parked it. Its emergency lights flashed normally, like nothing had happened. Hope flooded through me. We sprinted toward it. Halfway there, I noticed something. The driver's door was already open. Someone sat behind the wheel. Rick stopped first. His voice barely worked. Who is that? The driver slowly lifted his head. It was Rick. Another Rick, covered in dry blood. His uniform looked years old. His badge had turned green with corrosion. He stared through the windshield, then quietly mouthed 3 words. Don't come back. Before we could react, the duplicate Rick slammed the ambulance into reverse. The tires screamed. The vehicle disappeared down the road, not driving away, vanishing into darkness less than 100 yards ahead. Its flashing lights blinked once, twice. Gone. No engine. No crash. Nothing. The real Rick stumbled backward. This isn't real. It can't be. I grabbed his shoulder. It doesn't matter. We have to keep moving. Then I noticed the footprints. Fresh ones, leading across the road. Dozens of them. Bare feet. Adult. Child. Large. Small. All walking in the same direction. Into the forest. Every footprint ended exactly where the trees began. None continued inside. Something whispered my name. Very softly. Ethan. No, not Ethan. Daniel. This time it knew the correct name. The voice came from behind the trees. Then another voice whispered. Rick's name. Then another. Megan. Emma. Every missing person's loved ones. Calling them gently, patiently, like they knew exactly who would answer. Rick suddenly froze. I followed his gaze. A little girl stood between 2 trees. Pink raincoat, holding a stuffed rabbit. She couldn't have been older than 6. Emma. Rick whispered. She smiled. Daddy. I grabbed him immediately. No, that's not her. The little girl frowned. You left me. Rick's eyes filled with tears. No, you promised. She took one tiny step forward. The stuffed rabbit dropped into the mud. I've been waiting. Rick broke. He tore free from my grip and ran toward her. I chased him. Rick. He reached the tree line. The little girl wrapped her arms around him. For 1 second, it looked real. Then both of them disappeared. Not vanished. Folded, like paper being closed inside a book, leaving nothing behind except the stuffed rabbit. I reached the spot seconds later. Empty. No Rick. No child. No footprints. Only the rabbit lying in wet leaves. I picked it up. Inside one torn seam, someone had stitched tiny words into the fabric. Property of Blackwood Road. Then my phone vibrated again. Another voicemail. This one had been recorded 30 seconds in the future. My own terrified voice whispered only one sentence. Daniel, don't let the dispatcher answer next time. Before I could even process what that meant, every emergency siren in the county began echoing through the forest at once. Not from nearby, from every direction, and hidden beneath all of them, a telephone started ringing. Somewhere deep in the trees. waiting for someone to answer it. The phone kept ringing. Not loudly, not urgently, just one slow ring every few seconds. Like whoever was calling knew they had all the time in the world. I stood alone in the middle of Blackwood Road, soaked by the rain, clutching a child's stuffed rabbit that shouldn't have existed. Rick was gone. The ambulance was gone. The forest had gone silent again. Then my dispatch radio crackled. For one glorious second, I thought it was Megan. Instead, I heard myself. Unit 12. My own voice. Professional. Calm. Exactly the tone I used on a radio. I didn't answer. The voice continued anyway. Unit 12, be advised. The caller has accepted. Accepted? Accepted what? The ringing stopped. Every light around me went out. The moon disappeared behind thick clouds. Even the reflective paint on the road vanished into darkness. Then headlights appeared. Far ahead, one vehicle, driving toward me. Slowly. Too slowly. I stepped off the pavement. The truck never changed speed. When it came close enough, I recognized it. It was our search and rescue ambulance. The one Rick and I had arrived in. Only, it looked decades old. Rust covered the doors. The county logo had faded almost white. The windshield was cracked. One headlight hung loose by its wiring. It rolled to a stop beside me. The passenger door opened by itself. No one was inside. Then the dashboard radio switched on. A familiar voice spoke. Megan, if you're hearing me, this recording means I couldn't stop it. I climbed inside. I don't know why. Maybe because it was the first real human voice I'd heard in what felt like hours. Maybe because I needed answers. The tape continued. My name is Megan Collins. If this reaches you, you've already answered the road. Cold spread through my chest. What does that mean? The recording answered as if she'd heard me. Every 9/11 call from Blackwood Road is made by someone trying to escape. They're never calling us. They're calling. She hesitated. The next person. The tape clicked. Another voice replaced hers. Older. Male. Sheriff Walter Briggs. Retired nearly 15 years earlier. If you're listening, you've become the new anchor. I frowned. Anchor? The road doesn't kill people. It traps time. It needs one witness to remember. Everyone else gets erased. Outside the windshield, I watched dozens of headlights appear farther down the road. Cars, SUVs, motorcycles, all driving toward me. None of them had their high beams on. None of them slowed. Each vehicle passed silently. Inside every driver's seat, I saw someone talking on a phone, crying, begging, calling 911. Some were wearing clothes from the 1980s. Others looked modern. One truck belonged to the missing driver from Megan's first recording. Another belonged to a deputy who disappeared 8 years earlier. They drove straight through the rain, straight through me, like I wasn't there. Every single one reached the same bend in the road. Every single one vanished. Not crashed, vanished, as though the bend itself swallowed them. The tape resumed. The road repeats until someone refuses the call. No one ever has. Then, the tape stopped. A new call came through the dispatch console. Live. My radio lit up. Incoming 911. I stared at it. The caller ID simply read, Blackwood Road. Against every instinct, I answered. 911. There was only breathing. Then, a terrified man spoke. Please help me. I almost hit someone. I closed my eyes. I'd heard this call before. It was the very first recording Megan had played for me. The driver whispered. He looks like me. I finally understood. I wasn't listening to an archive. I was listening to the original call. Live. Across time. I gripped the microphone tighter. Every report. Every disappearance. Every recording. They all ended the same way because every dispatcher had said exactly what protocol demanded. Remain in your vehicle. Help is on the way. Nobody had ever tried anything different. I took a breath. Then I ignored every emergency procedure I'd ever learned. Listen to me. The caller stopped breathing. You don't have much time. When the second voice speaks, do not answer. When you reach the curve, don't keep driving. Silence. Then, the second voice interrupted. Not from his phone, from mine. My own voice. You finally remembered. The windshield exploded inward. Not from impact, from sound. Thousands of phones began ringing at once. Inside the ambulance. Outside, across the forest. Every emergency call ever placed on Blackwood Road echoed together. Voices layered over voices. Children, deputies, tourists, paramedics, dispatchers, all begging for help, all trapped inside the same endless moment. Then, every phone stopped. Complete silence. The rain disappeared. The clouds vanished. Morning sunlight broke through the trees. Birds sang. The ambulance was gone. I stood alone on ordinary pavement. County Route 19. No crash. No footprints. No stuffed rabbit. Just an empty road. Sheriff's deputies found me walking toward town an hour later. According to them, I'd only been missing for 38 minutes. Not all night. Rick Lawson had never been with me. Officially, he had retired 3 years before my assignment. Megan Collins no longer worked dispatch. Records showed she transferred out of state a decade earlier. No one remembered the 27 missing drivers. The archived recordings had disappeared from the evidence server. Blackwood Road's accident statistics showed nothing unusual. Every file had been rewritten. Everything, except one. Before leaving the station for good, I opened a live dispatch log one last time. There were no active emergencies. Just one note automatically generated at 2:17 a.m. No dispatcher had typed it. No system should have been able to create it. It contained only a single sentence. Next operator successfully notified. I resigned from search and rescue the following week. I never drove Blackwood Road again. But every few months, at exactly 2:17 a.m., my phone rings once. There is never a number. There is never a voicemail. Just one missed call. And somewhere out there, another frightened driver is dialing 911, praying that this time, someone gives them a different answer.